Retro Reviews. Sometimes it's fun to look back at critic and fan reactions from the year a movie came out. The internet is a time machine. Let's read the good and the bad. The bad are so much fun to read. The Empire Strikes Back, 1980. Judith Martin from the Washington Post on May 23, 1980 said, "The Empire Strikes Back has no plot structure, no character studies, let alone character development, no emotional or philosophical point to make. It has no original vision of the future, which is depicted as a pastiche of other junk culture formulae, such as the Western, the costume epic, and the World War II movie. Its specialty is special effects or visual tricks, some of which are playful, imaginative, and impressive, but others of which have become space movie cliches." Janet Voelpol, a reader of Starlog writing into the magazine in 1980, said, "Somebody should tell Harrison Ford that when a woman tells a man, 'I love you,' I know is not an acceptable response. That scene was not funny. It was infuriating." Nancy Savula, another writer into Starlog magazine, said, "Empire Strikes Back is fantastic. The special effects are superb, and Han Solo's 'I know' is the best line since Rhett Butler's 'My dear, I don't give a damn.'" David Gerrold of Starlog magazine issue 38 September 1980 wrote a review of The Empire Strikes Back. It says, "Just about every other critic in the country has been telling you how good the picture is. They've been falling all over themselves to tell you. It's embarrassing. I feel guilty for not liking it as much as I'm supposed to." Pauline Kael of The New Yorker in 1980 said, "This middle, bridging film is chained to an unresolved plot and doesn't have the leaping comic book hedonism of the 1977 Star Wars, but you can feel the love of movie magic that went into its cascading imagery. George Lucas kept the first movie hopping by cutting into short, choppy scenes. Irvin Kershner, who directed this one, is a master of visual flow and joining his own kinks and obsessions to Lucas's. He gave Empire a splendiferousness that may have even transcended what Lucas had in mind." Arthur Knight of The Hollywood Reporter on May 12, 1980 said, "As to the present episode, despite a couple of phoned-in messages from Ben Kenobi, aka Alec Guinness, which collected must last all of 40 seconds, most of Luke Skywalker's good advice comes from a fascinating green-hued character named Boba Fett, aka Jeremy Bulloch. And I'm still not certain whether he's a skillfully animated puppet or a real live human being. Whichever, he's one of Lucas's strongest assets in the Star Wars incarnation." Vincent Canby of the New York Times on June 15, 1980 said, "Ford as cheerfully nondescript as one could wish a comic strip hero to be, and Miss Fisher as sexlessly pretty as the base of a porcelain lamp. Become, is it rude to say, tiresome. One finally looks around them, even through them, at the decor. The Empire Strikes Back is about as personal as a Christmas card from a bank." This one comes from Harrison Ford. It's not a review or anything, but I just found it neat as I was looking through these gems from the 80s. It's a cool little blurb from Harrison Ford in a 1980 Rolling Stone interview. "One of George's real strengths is not giving you all the information you need, yet at the same time not denying you anything essential. You have a feeling that you want to know more at all times. I have heard frequently that there is a certain kind of disappointment with the ending of the second film. I've heard people say there's no end to this film, or I can't wait to find out what happens, but they will. And that's exactly the effect intended by the ending." David Gerrold of Starlog magazine continued his review of The Empire Strikes Back in issue 38 of Starlog magazine on September 1980. "Wait a minute, that asteroid isn't big enough to have a significant gravity well. I'll bet you could reach escape velocity by firing a double-barreled shotgun at the ground. And if the asteroid doesn't have gravity, then it can't hold an atmosphere. And even if our heroes are not breathing the atmosphere, then they still need the pressure of an atmosphere on their bodies to keep from exploding." And then some Starlog readers sent in letters to respond to David's review. And some of them are kind of brutal. And they're brutal in a different way than nowadays. Look, this isn't Twitter. You couldn't just type something in 2 seconds with your thumb and then feel like a digital super crusader. "I sure showed him." No, you couldn't do that. This is I have to write a letter, mail a letter, and literally wait months for the next issue of the magazine to come out just to see if I'm in it and see if anybody responds to it. It's the long fuck you. And here are a couple responses to David Gerrold's review of The Empire Strikes Back, and these are from Starlog magazine issue 40 November 1980. Leonard Bruce says, "I did not go to see Empire to be educated scientifically as David Gerrold did. I went there to be entertained, and I was." Dorothy A. Skinner said, "Star Wars and Empire are pure, unadulterated entertainment. Space opera at its best. Maybe my quote-unquote willing suspension of disbelief, which is a phrase that David Gerrold said in his review, is permanently suspended, I don't know, but for the most part, Gerrold's rather pettish criticisms annoyed me. PD Faye said, "Check out of the old people's home, David. You're losing your dreams and depressing me." Some other Starlog readers and Star Wars fans sent letters into Starlog magazine in 1980 as well. Not really directed at anyone in particular, but directed at the film. Sean Bernard said, "I know they wanted to leave something to settle in the other sequels, but they left a little too much. For instance, Han Solo's predicament. The movie should not have ended until Han was either killed by Boba Fett or Jabba or rescued by Lando Calrissian or Chewbacca. The former, preferably. Also, the fate of Bespin is not told. Was it taken by Lando's troops, taken by Imperial troops, or destroyed by Vader? Everybody just wants to know everything, right? It can't be any cliffhangers, it can't be any mystery. Even back in 1980. Robert L. Beatty Scarola said, "Is Luke related to Vader? Most think so now that Vader came right out and said it. Well, I say, do you believe everything you hear? Vader may have lied just to enlist Luke to his side. Vader would then dispose of Luke once he got what he wanted." Richard Hess says, "George Lucas has made a movie even more racist and sexist than the first." David K. Abernathy said, "After seeing The Empire Strikes Back, I came away with a feeling that finally, after all these years, science fiction has been brought to the screen in all its glory." Sometimes I'd like to hop back in the old internet time machine and look at past reviews, fan theories, reactions, you name it. There's always a sense of the unknown, a little innocence to it all. People guessing, bright-eyed, and looking forward to something. And it's fascinating to see where people's heads were all those years ago when things were brand new. Nowadays, Empire is hailed as one of the best sequels, if not the best sequel, of all time. But there's no doubt after reading through hundreds of critical reviews and fan reactions from the 80s, it was a little split. But overall, the vast majority praised The Empire and found it interesting and a worthy sequel. But there were a lot of detractors. And looking back, their criticism is pretty goddamn silly.